Let's get to the meat of this whole discussion around the top 10 coaches right now in the sport of college football. Now, as Cato and I were chopping it up and trying to put this list together, also full disclaimer, I don't want to speak for Cato on this list. This is my top 10. I think his top 10 might be a little bit different, but the discussion was fascinating. He brought up a great point. However you put together your top 10 coaches, you probably value different things. And also, in addition to that, you can spin any stat that you want to do your bidding when it comes to how you put your top 10 together. So you could make the case, hey, is Bill Belichick the best coach in college football? Say, JD hasn't coached a game yet. I don't know. He's got more Super Bowls than anybody. Does that matter? You see where I'm going with this? You can throw any stat out you want there to try and prove your point. I think at the end of the day, there's a fair amount of this that goes to your opinion. So to give us a table setting of this whole discussion, here's my criteria when it comes to putting together our top 10. I'm really placing a high value on both skins on the wall, so actual trophies that you've won, plus the recency in which you've won those trophies. That's why we have the label of top coaches right now, okay? You're with me? Record, of course, winning percentage plays a factor. Potential for future successes. That matters to me a whole lot because, like Marcus Freeman, spoiler, he's on this list. He's only been a head coach for 3 years. How do you compare his resume to a guy like Brian Kelly, who's been coaching for a very long time, over 260 games? We'll do our best to unpack that. Success is also in relation to your circumstances. Like Kalen DeBoer and what he did at Washington, I get it was a year ago. I think, taking them to a national title game should probably hold some weight. And in the same respect, what they didn't achieve at Alabama should probably hold some weight as well. So let's start here at number 10. We'll give you our honorable mentions at the end of this thing. But at number 10, I got Josh Heupel. And that might be a surprise to some of y'all. I don't think Josh Heupel probably makes the top 10 list if you're talking about the entire body of work versus other coaches and what they've done throughout the course of their career. But right now, Josh Heupel's a good freaking football coach. Won north of 70% of his games. And I think the most impressive thing about him and what he's done at Tennessee is the way they've broken into relevance in the SEC. They were always relevant, I should say, but Tennessee now, when you talk about what they've done under Josh Heupel, they're in that Tier 1 discussion. Now, are they firmly in Tier 1? Remains to be seen what they do next year. I think a lot of Josh Heupel moving up this list has a lot to do with what Nico Iamaleava is in his progression. But Josh Heupel's got a win over Nick Saban, has 2 double-digit win seasons the last 3 years, and he's done it with different quarterbacks. Like Joe Milton got a lot of flack for what he was at Tennessee, and I'm not telling you that was right or wrong, but I am saying Josh Heupel still managed to get that offense to score over 30 points a game. Oh, by the way, the defense was the punchline for a lot of folks talking about what Tennessee was, and right now is an offensive coach, and Josh Heupel, who again got a defense now to be top 5 in America last year. So Josh Heupel, the coaching job he's done, oh, by the way, he's also got his team to the college football playoff, something that put him in the number 10 spot for me ahead of some of the other coaches. Josh Heupel was right now a top 10 coach in the sport. I think the resume proves it. I think that the fact that he inherited a team that was 3-7 from the COVID era when he showed up, that matters to me. So Josh Heupel overall, the body of work, the progression, all those things, to me he's at 10. But again, if he wants to move up this list, I need to see Nico Iamaleava take a step as what he was as a recruit to where he is going to be in 2025, because the dude was the top player in America for us here at On 3 coming out of high school. So Josh Heupel filling that 10 spot for us on the top 10 coaches as of right now in the sport. At number 9, I got James Franklin. And he's really interesting to talk about because in a weird way, he's sort of a polarizing figure. Like, he might be the most scrutinized head coach that wins double-digit games just about every single year. 6 of James Franklin's last 9 seasons, he has won double-digit games. One of those 3 that he did not win double-digit games, they didn't even play double-digit games. It was the COVID year. So, like James Franklin, say what you want, he still has got 2 college football playoff wins. He still has a Rose Bowl to his name, still has a Big Ten title to his name. It's more than some of these guys ahead of him have when it comes to playoff wins. So James Franklin at 9. This is the year now where you would hope, if you're a Penn State fan, got a lot of pieces in place. You went out and grabbed Jim Knowles. Maybe this is the year that James Franklin gets the jetpack on and shoots up the rankings. We'll see. At number 8, you got Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly, I think you can make a very fair argument that he's probably the most steady coach on this list. over 260 career games instead of the Open, and he's won 72% of those. Now, there's the asterisk of skins on the wall for him because in playing a conference for a really long time with Notre Dame, otherwise maybe he would have had a couple of those. Some people might see Brian Kelly at 8 and think, man, he should be a little bit higher, right? Like that dude's about as, again, you said it, JD, as steady as they come. Is there really, 7 other coaches that are better than Brian Kelly? The reason why I don't have him higher is I look at, again, recency for LSU. How much more has Brian Kelly gotten out of LSU's roster than what their talent was going to get them to? Like in 2023, you had a generational talent, which I don't think is overstretching when you talk about Jaden Daniels. You had 2 first-round picks on the outside to go with your first-round quarterback who won the Heisman Trophy, and you won 9 games. I'm not telling you it's Brian Kelly's fault, but if we're holding him responsible as the guy who's overseeing the whole situation in Baton Rouge, there wasn't defense there. So from where I'm sitting, LSU, relative to what they had on the roster, underachieved. In 2024, new quarterback, again, defense still trying to get their footing under a new system. You got a new OC, all that. 8-4 in the regular season is not bad, but again, is that elevation of what that roster was going to do? I don't think they underperformed, but I don't think they overperformed either. So for Brian Kelly, I'm interested to see now what his future is in Baton Rouge when it comes to competing for SEC titles and national titles. I'll give him this too. He made the SEC championship his first year in the conference. That should be worth something. I'm not telling you that Brian Kelly's done a bad job, but the previous coaches before him, and Ed Orgeron, Les Miles, they won national titles at LSU. And I don't think either of those cats, quite frankly, are as good a coach as Brian Kelly based on winning percentage alone. So Brian Kelly at 8. We spent a long time qualifying why he's not higher, just because we have so much respect for Brian Kelly and what he is as a head coach. 8 for us right now. Very curious to see what they are in 2025. At number 7, we got Dabo Swinney. And if this wasn't a prisoner of the moment kind of ranking, if this wasn't just hey, we're ranking these guys right now, he's probably a top 3 guy. Like the resume speaks for itself. 2 national titles. One other coach in the sport has that right now that's currently coaching. 7 playoff appearances. Just won his 9th ACC title. A 79% win percentage. He didn't have anything to prove. Also, speaking to like your success of your circumstances, Dabo Swinney didn't walk into a ready-made situation at Clemson. Like Clemson wasn't what they are right now when he got the keys to that whole vehicle. He has made Clemson now a power in college football. So you ask the same question, JD, why isn't he higher? I'm a little bit curious in the trend of where college football is heading. Will Clemson evolve enough and adapt enough to keep the same level of success that they've had? Because I mentioned 7 playoff appearances. 6 of those were all in a row when the 4-team playoff started. It was incredible, but you see the sport start to change. What do great coaches do? They adapt. Saban did it. Kirby did it. Ryan Day did it. Is Clemson going to adapt enough to be able to be still a top-tier team in college football? Now, give them a lot of credit. They made the playoff this year and won the ACC this year in the new age of what college football is in the portal and NIL. And also give him credit because they've kind of dipped their toe in the portal and they went outside the staff to hire. So I'll say this too. I really like Clemson in 2025. I've said that for everyone to hear. So Dabo Swinney at 7 based on recency, but if you want to go off the full body of work, he is a case for top 3, potentially number 1, depending on how you want to value those conference titles. So that's our 10 through 7. At number 6, I got Marcus Freeman. And Marcus Freeman, if you're arguing that he should be higher on this list, based on what's happening right now, I don't disagree. To me, I think he could be a guy that's top 3 in 1 to 2 years on this list. It's just tricky because of we'll talk about the guys that are ahead of him, but let's start with the positives because we got too quickly into the discussion of trying to defend Marcus Freeman not being higher. But I'll say this, I'd send my kid to play for Marcus Freeman tomorrow. The way that he runs Notre Dame, the way that he's rebranded Notre Dame football, he's completely renovated what that program is. Like Notre Dame used to be what I would call a cruise ship. Remember cruises used to be all the rave for a little bit there? Like everyone's going on a honeymoon cruise. That was the trip to take. And then sure, you get a couple of bad stories in the press and a couple of, maybe you watched Titanic too many times and cruises kind of became a little bit stale. That was Notre Dame football. Kind of became a little bit stale. Great brand, great reputation to some extent. Like on the surface, like, yeah, cruises sound nice, but over time they got stale. Marcus Freeman shows up, makes Notre Dame an all-inclusive resort. Everybody that I know for their honeymoon, they're hitting I don't know all the name brands, but they're hitting all-inclusives for their spring break, for their honeymoon, whatever it is. That's now Notre Dame. They are a new destination that people want to go and be a part of. He's only been there 3 years. He's 33-10, so that winning percentage should hold some weight. There's no conference for them to win conference titles in, but like he's fresh off a national title appearance, man. He's a not just an ascending star in this sport. He's just straight up a star in this sport right now. I think his best year is still ahead of him, and I think the title run they had this year, getting to that game with all the injuries, speaks to the traits of what Notre Dame football is going to be. And yes, it's specific to that 2024 team. Something tells me that those traits have staying power. And we said it post-Natty, like the dude just got some dog in him. And when your coach is a dog, pretty likely chance that your team's going to be very dog-like. So Marcus Freeman, can't say enough good things about him. Felt weird not putting him higher on this list. We got him at 6 with the potential, of course, to move up. If you want to have something tangible for us to point to as to why he's not higher, the losses to Marshall, the losses to NIU, there's something tangible for you. But best year is still ahead of him, and I think he will be someone that ultimately, I want to be shocked he brought a national title back to Notre Dame. So let's go here 5 through 1. At number 5, I got Dan Lanning. He is 35-6 as a head coach. And I'll say this, I just mentioned what I think Marcus Freeman's going to do. It's truly a matter of when, not if, to me, that Dan Lanning wins the national title. I truly believe that. They have continued to progress every single year since he's been the head coach there in terms of win total. He won the toughest conference in college football their first year there. What's so impressive to me about Dan Lanning, outside of the rapid success they've had in a short window of time, I'm most impressed by 2 things. One, he's changed the perception of Oregon football. Remember Oregon under Chip Kelly? This is not throwing shade at Chip Kelly. This is just like the reality of what Oregon was when he was the head coach. Nike uniforms, the flash, this West Coast school that's blowing teams out because of the fast-paced offense and all that. It was more flash than they'd get to play in teams with tough lines of scrimmage and kind of have some struggles. Dan Lanning has made Oregon a legitimate line of scrimmage football team. They were a Big Ten team before getting to the Big Ten. That's what Oregon has been. That's what they're going to be. And that's not going to change. And that's extremely impressive given what Dan Lanning has done to build that roster. The second thing that impresses me is the way that he's handled changes both on his staff and on his roster. Like, look at the offensive coordinator for a second. He shows up. Kenny Dillingham's his OC. Kenny Dillingham is now a guy that, probably could make a case for being on this list, if we're going to be honest about it. He's now the head coach at Arizona State, and they have a lot of success. Okay, he leaves. Who do you go hire? Will Stein. They don't miss a beat, dude. They do not miss a beat. They haven't missed a beat. Bo Nix is there. Tears it up for 2 years. Then he's gone. Okay, you need to get a new quarterback. Who's going to be? Dylan Gabriel. And that's a very small sample size of what I think Dan Lanning is going to continue to do at Oregon. Things are going to change. That's the price of success. That's the nature of college football. That people can't play this game for 10 years, 15 years, as much as we'd like them to, as much as we have as many waivers as now exist in college football. There's real staying power there, though, because to be able to adapt so early in his career to those specific changes, again, it's a matter of time with the resources, with the way that he recruits, with the future changes he's going to have to handle. Oregon's in a really good place for a long time coming. So Dan Lanning at 5. Now, this is where we're going to get the most pushback, between 5 and 4, and I totally get it, but I would encourage us all to wind back the clock about a year. You're watching Washington beat Texas to punch their ticket to play Michigan for the national championship. Yes, Washington from Seattle, a school that's got a solid tradition in the history, but in the modern era, we're not really all that accustomed to seeing Washington go play for a national championship. They did under Kalen DeBoer. And Kalen DeBoer, for me, is number 4 on this list. Yes, we're going to get to the Bama stuff in a second. This is just a resume for me. There's too much on this resume for me to put Kalen DeBoer any lower than number 4 in these top 10 coach rankings as of right now. He is a combined 5-0 in games against Dan Lanning and Steve Sarkisian. I think Dan Lanning's going to potentially, if this is a conversation around who would you hire, Dan Lanning might be number 1 for me on this list. But Kalen DeBoer, men lie, women lie, the football field don't lie. He's 3-0 against my guy. Steve Sarkisian, we have on this list as well. I won't spoil where he's at, but he undefeated against him as well. So there's too much there. Plus, you pair with the idea of he's a year removed from playing for a national championship. And don't get it twisted. That Washington team was not some little engine that could. There's a lot of NFL dudes on that roster. But Kalen DeBoer still put it together and still led that operation into a game against Michigan where they had a chance to go win the whole darn thing in 4 quarters. So the Bama situation, we'll talk about a little bit more in this show. I can't help but feel like Bama and the situation Kalen DeBoer walked into there, I'm not going to tell you that there wasn't still talent for them to win, but I think the nature of the ingredients that Kalen DeBoer was dealing with weren't necessarily playing exactly to who he is as a head coach and the systems he wants to run. Again, we'll talk about that more later in the show, but to put it simply, I think Kalen DeBoer and his success at Alabama will be much better than what it has been these past few years. But if, again, given right now in college football, he's a year removed from playing for a national title. So let's tighten up there on the Kalen DeBoer slander. At number 3, I got Steve Sarkisian. And no, he hasn't won a national title yet, but it's so impressive, going back to my criteria, the circumstances he was working with when he took that Texas job, not from a resources perspective. Remember the narrative around Texas? You can't win there. It's the boosters are going to put their hands all in the pot, and there's a bad culture internally. Like, take it if you want to. It's a good job from a brand point of view, but you just can't win there. And then a few years later, Steve Sarkisian wins the Big 12. His first year in the SEC, plays for the conference title, and he is the only coach on this list to be in the playoff each of the last 2 years in both the 4-team and the 12-team playoff. All I'm saying is the way that he's built Texas, they're going to be around for a while in the SEC. Like it's like the bully showing up to the new school right away, still the bully. They lost 2 All-American defensive tackles and still were top 15 in America when it came to rush yards allowed per game. That's real deal toughness. That's not quarterback guru. That's not offensive savant. He is still those things. I believe that, but that's real deal physical. And guess what? They're still loaded to be able to play like that in the trenches here going forward. So Steve Sarkisian, I understand there's not all the accolades maybe of some of these other guys on these lists, but as a head coach and where he's got Texas to right now, from being quite frankly, the plague for some of these coaches not being able to figure it out, and for him to have them in the college football playoff each of the last 2 years, Texas is just getting started, but Sark is at 3 for me on this list. Now at number 2, I can't help but envision the Joker clap from The Dark Knight, where we walk in the cell and the Joker starts clapping for the police chief. That's got to be Ryan Day a little bit here, right? Everyone talking about what he couldn't do as a head coach, and he can't beat Michigan, and so therefore he shouldn't be considered a top guy, and it's a bad culture, and he's soft and all this. And you know what? I got 2 numbers for you. 70-10. Mic drop. 70-10 as a head coach. Y'all, that's ridiculous. In 6 seasons being a head coach to have that record, that's unbelievable. And so I think now there's real proof with this national championship that the dude's a really good coach. And I already know in the comment section, the Michigan faithful, God bless you. I don't think I would do anything different if I were you, but the Michigan faithful will say, yeah, but he can't beat Michigan. Well, first of all, that's not entirely true. He's not 0-for against Michigan. Let's make sure that's clear. And the other thing I would say is, if you are a Oklahoma fan waking up today, and I asked you your opinion of Ryan Day and Ohio State, say I just won the national championship. Maybe you'd eventually get around to he's had trouble against Michigan, but I don't think that's really at the forefront of your mind. When I went to school in New York, it was super cold and it would snow all the time, and there was this obsession within that bubble of having a Canada Goose jacket from these, call a spade here, pinkies up personnel that I went to school with. Canada Goose is super warm, super nice, super expensive jacket. And if you had one, it was all the rage. It was the obsession. But you get outside the Northeast, you get outside that, how should I say this? Parents with a big pocketbook kind of bubble. Nobody cares about Canada Goose, dude. Nobody. It's nice that you have it. Again, good for you. Here's a cookie, but nobody really cares. That's how I feel about the Ryan Day Michigan stuff. It's important to some degree. Again, I don't think it's a thing that'll get excused this time next year if they lose. I think there's probably going to have to be an uncomfortable conversation. I don't know what that looks like. But they just won a national title. He's 70-10. He's got 2 Big Ten titles to his name. Outside of that Michigan-Ohio State bubble, I think everyone is seeing pretty clearly Ryan Day is one of the best coaches in the sport. For us, he's number 2 on this list. And a number 1, you knew it was coming. We all knew it was coming. It's Kirby Smart. And Kirby Smart to me is Drake. Like, he may not win every exchange. Every album may not be the very best work. Like, y'all, to be honest, for my Drake fans out there, I could take or leave Her Loss. I really could have. I don't know if you feel that way, but I could have. Not every single album is national title caliber. But when you sit down and you get ready to hit some bench press, or maybe you're about to squat heavy, you're still throwing in More Life. You're still throwing in Take Care. Maybe if you're trying to squat a little bit sad, you're still throwing in the hits. You're still probably having Drake every single year as number 1 on your Spotify Wrapped, right? That's still Kirby Smart. No, he hasn't won the national title the last 2 years, but guess what? He's won 2 of the last 4. I'll take it a step further. We hate hypotheticals, but hypothetically speaking, Georgia in a 12-team playoff in 2023, going into that 2024 season where they would have played Michigan, I suppose. I don't know. Thought they were the most talented team if they have a chance to get healthy. My own opinion. Kirby Smart's still that guy. The national titles prove it. And until there is this massive drop-off, I still think the crown is his, and you're going to have to come take it from him. But Kirby Smart is number 1 for me. And my top 10 college football coaches as of right now. So the honorable mentions for us here, just got to give some flowers out. Lane Kiffin very, very nearly made the list. I gave Josh Heupel the nod there because of the college football playoff berth this year. Also a slight win percentage edge to Josh Heupel, like by 3%. Lincoln Riley, you could make a case for him. There's just been too much inconsistency at USC the last couple of years. Kyle Whittingham, same deal. I mean, if you're taking total body of work, definitely deserves to be on the list. But just right now, I'll put the other 10 up there. Rhett Lashley, eyes emoji. I mean, he's cooking at SMU. At least deserves a shout out. Kurt Google Me Signetti. I love what he did this year. Need to probably see a little more at Indiana with maybe a little more rigor on the schedule before we put him in the top 10. And then Kenny Dillingham, as I mentioned before, you could make a case for him. I'm not going to do it just yet when it comes to the top 10 based on the other coaches ahead of him, but I see the merit and I don't hate it if you have him in your top 10. So more power to you. So to recap it for you, the top 10 coaches in college football right now. Number 10, you got Josh Heupel. Number 9, you got James Franklin, the most scrutinized coach in college football, who all he does is win double-digit games. But so be it. Number 8, you got Brian Kelly. At number 7, you got Dabo Swinney, who could be a lot higher on this list if it was a total body of work. But right now, I got him at 7. Marcus Freeman at 6. Dan Lanning at 5. Kalen DeBoer, who is, again, a combined 5-0 between Lanning and Sark at number 4. Steve Sarkisian, number 3. Ryan Day at number 2. And at number 1, still the man, Kirby Smart, the number 1 coach in college football as it stands right now.